The highly controversial PFF Top 50 Players has been released. What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch, back with another NFL reaction video, this time to the annual PFF 50, counting down their top 50 best NFL players entering the 2024 NFL season. Some people hate PFF. Some people in the NFL community love PFF. I'm probably closer to the love side of things, but I can also admit that the rankings can be pretty pathetic, PFF. So, let's have some fun. Let's react to the Pro Football Focus top 50 players in the NFL entering 2024. I have not seen the list. I will now be giving my opinion on the list. Gronk, spike the like button for more NFL reactions just like this. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of the PFF 50. And subscribe for more NFL reactions. Let's go. Okay. PFF 50. The 50 best players in the NFL ahead of the 2024 season. So the headlines here. Patrick Mahomes is the NFL's best player. Another list with Patrick Mahomes at number 1. We are watching one of the best to ever do it. Mahomes' 91.7 PFF overall grade across 4 playoff games was a notable and necessary jump from an 85.1 he recorded during the 2023 regular season. We've already been down this road a couple times in these videos. But at least PFF mentions it here that if he had not had the playoffs that he had, he would have been looked at as having a down year. So that at least is a through line that I can connect to all these reactions of like, people forget that Patrick Mahomes was not having his best season, and then he turned it on in the playoffs, and that's what enabled him to be the clear-cut number 1 player in the NFL. Because I don't think people would still be saying that he's the clear-cut number 1 player in the NFL if they would have lost to the Bills or the Ravens, because those teams have great quarterbacks in their own right that could be argued as the best quarterback in the NFL, period. Right? So, just saying, I like that they brought that up. Derrick Henry and Amon-Ra St. Brown, headline number 30 to 40 group. Not sure why they bring that up, but let's go. And of course, another list that goes from number 1 to number 50. So we're going to work from Mahomes to number 50. So Patrick Mahomes, we talked about that. Number 2, Myles Garrett seems to be a common theme among all lists. You guys will see my edge rusher list. Myles Garrett is, of course, an edge rusher. You will also notice that Myles Garrett is not my number 1 edge rusher in the NFL, which is why I do not believe he's the number 2 player in the NFL, but I do believe he's probably in the top 5 or 6. I will say that. I also stated in that edge rusher video, and I'll state it again, the top 5 edge rushers in the NFL, it's the strongest top 5 at any position in the NFL right now, and it's probably the top 5 strongest I've ever seen at the edge rush position in my life. Probably. I can't remember a time that it actually has been stronger than right now. The top 5 edge rushers in the sport could all win Defensive Player of the Year, and there's maybe even 1 or 2 more that could win Defensive Player of the Year next year. So, yeah. Myles Garrett is great, though. Very well-rounded player, and I think he's great against the run, great as a pass rusher, demands double teams, allows everybody around him to be better. At number 3, Trent Williams is the best offensive lineman in the league. Honestly, I think Trent Williams is phenomenal. I think he's the best tackle in the NFL. Would I have him as the 3rd best player in the league? Probably not. I didn't think Trent Williams had, his absolute peak season last year. I definitely felt like his peak was probably the 2021 season, but I will say that he's still the best tackle in the league, so he's somewhere in the top 10. I just don't think I'd put him number 3. At number 4, Justin Jefferson as the best receiver, which is interesting because he obviously wasn't the best receiver last year. I discussed how Tyreek Hill, he had more yards per game, more yards per route run than Justin Jefferson. Even if you're just accounting for efficiency stats, Tyreek Hill was still better than Justin Jefferson. He's more dynamic. He is faster. He is more of an explosive element to an offense. He's more dangerous after the catch. Yes, Justin Jefferson is younger, and yes, Justin Jefferson is in the prime of his career, and you can make an argument that the last 3 seasons, he's the best receiver in the league. But Tyreek, you look at the last 2 years in Miami, I mean, there's been nobody better. So to me, like, Jefferson being already 2 spots higher, 3 spots higher, just looking at this list, than Tyreek Hill, I think is bad. I think it's a bad ranking. I would have Tyreek Hill higher than Jefferson entering this season because of what he did last season. He led the NFL in yards. He led the NFL in touchdowns. He led the NFL in yards per route run. He led the NFL in yards per touch. There's no reason to have Jefferson this year ahead of Tyreek unless you're simply talking about age, and that's it, personally. At number 5, Micah Parsons. Again, I wouldn't have Parsons at 5. I think he's like the 3rd or 4th best edge rusher in the league. So just for that fact alone, I couldn't have him at number 5. He'd probably be closer. He's still a great player, though. He's probably a top 10, top 12 player. So I'd have him in that range, 8 to 12 range. But top 5 seems a little bit too high. He is probably the best pass rusher in the NFL. And PFF says Parsons became just the 4th player in the PFF era to record 100 or more pressures. Now, where I think that he is exposed at times is as a run defender, personally. I think because of his size, right? He is very dynamic, very explosive, as explained here. But I think in terms of run defense, teams can wear him down and wear him out. Point to the Bills game. At number 6, Chris Jones. That's actually surprisingly high ranking, in my opinion. I don't hate it. The one thing I'd say about Chris Jones is, and you guys know I'm like Chris Jones fan club, but he was like very up and down with his effort level last year. And I think that was some of the concern and cause for the Chiefs' run defense, right? So I would say that Chris Jones, the one thing I'm concerned about is him now getting his money and being a little bit older and maybe being fat and happy. Because I think entering next year, he might be worse than he was this year just because he's entering that age cliff where he might fall off a little bit. But obviously, I mean, if it were not for Aaron Donald, we'd be talking about Chris Jones as one of the greatest defensive tackles of all time. And he is in his own right. But because Aaron Donald was there and overshadowed him, I think people forgot how great he is. And the number one thing you can say about Chris Jones is every big game, the guy makes a crucial play to impact the game. So I do agree that he's probably top 10. I just think 6 is maybe too high entering next year. At number 7, Nick Bosa. That's fair to have him in the top 10. I actually thought he's coming off a down year, going from 18.5 sacks to 10.5 sacks, despite his pressure stats and all that, right? He did have 20 total pressures and 390+ PFF grades in the the playoffs, I think they're going to say here. I'm not exactly sure. Including 12 in a Super Bowl loss to Kansas City. Absurd 27 pressures in 3 playoff games. Yes, he had a great playoffs. I would agree with that. His regular season was a bit up and down, not as good as usual. But yeah, his playoffs were absurd. Just the Super Bowl, though, I thought he played really well. I think he should have, maybe got a holding call or 2, but that's just me. Tyreek Hill at number 8. He's definitely top 10. I'd just switch him with Justin Jefferson. We'd be fine. Nick Bosa, I think that there's an edge rusher they haven't listed yet that I'd probably put him below. Fred Warner at number 9 seems pretty high in my opinion. Like, you could argue he's the best linebacker in the league because of his coverage capabilities, his IQ and all that. I don't think he is, though. I think Roquan Smith is better right now, but that's fine. I mean, I think that he's probably more of a top 20, top 25 player, probably top 20 player in the NFL, not a top 10 player. I think top 10 is a little bit too high. Again, you guys can let me know where you stand on that, but playing linebacker in today's NFL is incredibly difficult. Few players do it consistently well. Fred Warner continually remains atop the PFF rankings with elite grades despite those challenges. See, here's my problem, though. I understand that these are based on PFF grades. I think using only PFF grade as the only metric to list a player at number 9 is like kind of suspect, right? Like, I don't know. Like, you even say that he has an unusual uptick of missed tackles, which is a negative stat. So to me, like, I don't think Fred Warner was better this past year than he was the year before or the year before that. So personally, I would have him a little bit lower. McCaffrey's the one, again, I consistently see on these lists. I just don't know how you could not have McCaffrey in your top 5. Like, literally. Okay, so he had 2,443 all-purpose yards across 20 games. If you just take the regular season, he had 400 more total yards than any running back in the NFL. He had 21 touchdowns. He had 70-plus catches. He is the engine of the best offense in the NFL. He's the most complete running back in the league. He can pass block. He can pass catch. He can run routes. He can run. He's got great vision. How do you not put him in the top 5? How is he worse than Fred Warner? How last year was he worse than Nick Bosa? Those are his own teammates. He's definitely better than those players. He definitely is. I mean, the MVP of the 49ers was Christian McCaffrey last year. I think 99% of the fan base would say that, including their coach, Kyle Shanahan. So to me, I just don't like that ranking at all. Despite him being a running back, he deserves, I don't care. You throw that argument out the window when you're talking about a top 50 or a top 100. You're not talking about the value of the position, in my opinion. That's just me, though. At number 11, Dexter Lawrence. Okay, that's fine. I don't hate that. Best nose tackle in the NFL over the past 2 seasons. His resume includes 81 quarterback pressures when lining up either head up over the center or shaded to either side of the center. Next closest player has 16. So I think a good argument for Dexter Lawrence is the dominance of his position and the ability to pass rush at the position that is not exactly known for that, which is nose tackle. At his size, at his stature, at his run defense capabilities, to be able to impact the game as a pass rusher the way he does is extraordinary. So I think being top 15 is absolutely correct. Josh Allen not being in the top 10 is highly suspect. You got to get checked. Okay? He's easily the second best quarterback in the league. Allen actually posted the best PFF overall grade this year. So if you're going to use a grade for Fred Warner, if you're going to use a grade for other players and list that in your ranking, why are we putting the guy that we graded as the best quarterback in the NFL in 2023's regular season, which I would actually 100% agree with? The best quarterback in last regular season was not Mahomes, it was not Lamar, it was not anybody but Josh Allen. Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott. The best quarterback in the regular season last year led the NFL in touchdowns, total yards, right? Josh Allen was the best quarterback in the NFL. So if you're not going to put the best quarterback in the NFL in the regular season, not the overall, that's Patrick Mahomes, in the top 10, you're smoking drugs, okay? At number 13, Lamar Jackson. If you're not going to put the MVP of the NFL, no matter if I think Allen was better, if you're not going to put the MVP of the league in your top 10, you are smoking drugs. That's all I have to say, right? Like, his 77% adjusted completion rate was the top mark of his career. He remained an elite rushing threat. He's got 2 MVPs. Like, come on, man. TJ Watt at number 14. TJ Watt, to me, you guys will see where I rank him on the edge list. There is no debate that TJ Watt is not a top 10 player in the NFL. This is an insane ranking to have him at number 14. It is absolutely absurd. He led the NFL in sacks last year. He's led the NFL in sacks 3 times. He led the NFL in batted passes last year. He could have easily won the Defensive Player of the Year last year. Easily. He is the playmaker on the defensive side of the football. A defensive touchdown, an interception, 4 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries. There may not be a better playmaker on the defensive side of the football. You guys say that in your sentence, in your little paragraph, and you still have him at 14th. Check yourself. Go to a doctor. At number 15, Travis Kelce. Didn't have a vintage year. I think that might be a little bit too high. Because, again, did not have a great year. You say it in the first sentence. If you have to say this in your first sentence of your paragraph, you probably have him a little bit too high. Didn't have a vintage year in 2023 at his age. It seemed like he might finally be slowing down, but he did turn it on in the postseason. Absolutely right. 355 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think he's probably low-end top 20 in my opinion, but this isn't an egregious ranking. I just think it might be a little bit too high. Sauce Gardner, the best corner in football, backed up his rookie season with just as an impressive 2023. So looking at the stats, I haven't really looked at these. Gardner now has back-to-back seasons with coverage grades of at least 90, pairing with that 24 pass breakups, has allowed just 9.9 yards per catch and a 63 passer rating. That's over the last 2 years. So yeah, I like that. Joe Burrow at 17, definitely top 20. Because of injury, I can understand why he's not in the top 10. I think that he is fairly ranked as the third or fourth best quarterback in the league. Max Crosby is too low. He's the best run defender at his position in the NFL. He led defensive ends in tackles. He led defensive ends in tackles for loss. He had 14 and a half sacks. He plays on a D-line with nobody else, and he plays every single snap. 94 quarterback pressures. The guy plays the most snaps in the NFL. George Kittle, I think, might be a tad too high. I love the player. He's great all around, great blocker. But to me, what discouraged me was his performance in the playoffs. I didn't think he played that well. Now, that being said, Kittle led the position in yards per route run at 2.22. He was probably the best tight end in the regular season last year. I would not debate that. At number 20, CeeDee Lamb, that's fair. Don't have to say much. We went over that in the receiver rankings. Number 3 receiver in the league. Although you can make an argument that the number 3 receiver in the league should probably be higher than this, right? Like, they don't have... I'd rather have CeeDee Lamb than Travis Kelce. Would you not? So maybe switch those two. That's just me. Lane Johnson, I actually really like this ranking. Probably the best right tackle throughout the last few years in the NFL. Yep. Tristan Wirfs, I respect it. I love it, actually, at number 22. Finally, somebody ranks Tristan Wirfs in the right spot. One of the best right tackles in the game. The second he entered the NFL. Well, he was a left tackle before. So Tristan Wirfs was moved to the left side. He was a right tackle, then a left tackle, sorry. So, yeah, he's probably the second best left tackle now, and he was probably the second best right tackle then, only behind Lane Johnson. He allowed 24 quarterback pressures on the left side, earning a 84.3 PFF pass blocking grade, and was solid as a run blocker. He's now played 4 straight seasons with at least an 81.1 grade. Using grading for offensive linemen is fair. I will say that. Because sometimes even like sack stats and stuff can be misleading. Antoine Winfield, I love the player. I don't know if you guys remember me when I was talking about Antoine Winfield coming out of the draft, but he was like my favorite player in that entire draft class. It just so happened that the Bucs got Wirfs and Winfield, or he was one of them at least. He was like in my top 5 favorite players. I still think he's a little bit too high. The Winfield, I love Winfield. I think the thing that with him though is like, The pure coverage capability, I think there's guys that are a little bit better. Now, in terms of pressures, play in the run game, playmaking, he's definitely up there in all those categories. So I think he is also in a great system for what he does well. Like Todd Bowles uses him very well. He's probably in the top 30-ish, but 23 does feel a little bit high. Jamar Chase is a stud, no debate about that at 24. A.J. Brown being right next to him makes perfect sense. Kyle Hamilton might be the best safety, might be the best defensive back in the NFL, period. He is deployed as primary as slot defender. Glad that they brought that up. Quinnen Williams at number 27 is fair. Penei Sewell at number 28 is fair. We've been over this. 93.1 run block grade, one of the best single season marks of the past 18 seasons. So based on that argument alone, you should maybe have him a little bit higher. At number 29, Andrew Thomas seems a bit high. Weirdly, the loss of Andrew Thomas to injury last season was devastating to an already weak offensive line. He ended up playing just 576 snaps. So I think just for that, he should be moved down just a little bit, just for not being healthy. I would agree. He's probably like a top 5 left tackle in the league. But again, like, I guess they have him, what, 3rd? Because what? You've got Williams first, left tackles, Williams, then Wirfs, then Thomas. Do you guys agree with that? Thomas is the 3rd best left tackle. Lane Johnson, then Penei Sewell at right tackle. I don't know. Creed Humphrey as the best center in the league. I don't really see much of complaint here. Frank Ragnow, I think, is pretty close. I don't know if I'd have him at number 30. Seems a little high. Derrick Henry, I'd move down personally. I think he's still a great player, but I don't know. Henry still averaged 3.3 yards per carry after contact, broke 57 tackles, earning a 90.1 grade. I just wish he was better in the receiving game, but that's just me. So having Derrick Henry at 31 and McCaffrey at 10, I don't know. Like if you had McCaffrey at 5, then I feel like I'd feel a little bit better about that. At number 32, Amon-Ra, I'd have Roquan above him. I think he deserves a place on this list. I just think, like, Roquan is probably a better player. Hutchinson, Lions fans, let me know in the comments. Who's a better player, Amon-Ra or Hutchinson? Hutchinson led the NFL in pressures last year for the entire season, I believe, and hurries as well. Patrick Surtain seems almost overrated at this point, but he deserves to be on the list. Trent McDuffie deserves to be on the list. Another list that puts McDuffie ahead of Snead, interestingly enough. Jesse Bates, I think, should be a little bit higher. I'd have him over Surtain. Chris Lindstrom as the best guard in football. If you have him as the best guard in football, maybe he should be a little bit higher. Joe Tooney, that's fair as number 2 guard in the NFL. Jalen Ramsey as the 3rd best corner in the league. I don't hate that. Jalen Carter as on the list in general seems a little bold, but if you're projecting, then perhaps. Right? He finished his debut season with an 89 grade, ranking 5th in the NFL. Has the talent to be at the very top of this list. Only players like Donald have showcased that kind of instant impact. Fair enough. I do agree that, like, based on projection, he's probably on the list. Based on last year alone, maybe not on the list. Derek Brown had the most tackles ever, I believe, for a defensive tackle, if I'm not mistaken, in a season. Jalen Johnson at 42. I would have him above Pat Surtain, probably. I'd also, maybe have him above Jalen Ramsey. Laramie Tunsil, I think, deserves to be on the list. Demario Davis, yeah, probably. Mark Andrews, no, I think he's too high. I think he's top 100, but not top 50. Frank Ragnow, that's fine. We talked about him. Javon Holland, surprisingly, making the list at 48. I don't know about that. Again, like, maybe. Brandon Ayuk, yeah, I think he's on the list. Debo, no. A lot of 49ers made this list. Holy smokes. What, like 8? 8 of the top 50 are 49er players? That's insane. Debo should not be on the list, I don't think. Not a top 50 player in the NFL. Who are they missing on this list? Right? Like, that's what you got to think about. Like, who are they missing on this list? Quarterback-wise, who are they missing? CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert, Matt Stafford, Dak Prescott. Any of those quarterbacks could maybe be involved there. Running back-wise, right? I had Brees and Bijan, but I understand that those guys are somewhat projections, so that's fair. Wide receiver, they had Ayuk, they had Debo, they didn't have Devontae Adams, which is interesting considering PFF loves Devontae Adams. They didn't have Mike Evans on the list, interesting. One of the more consistent football players. They had Amon-Ra, they did not have Nico Collins, who was great last year, so that's fine, that's fair. Tight end, maybe they could have put Sam Laporta, but no. Offensive lineman, I think they got the right ones. I wouldn't really tackle. Maybe there's one that I can't think of at the moment that they should have had on the list. Tyron Smith, maybe? Tyron Smith. Guard, maybe Zach Martin could have made the list. Center, they put Frank Ragnow, so I'm fine with center. Defensive tackle, they have Lawrence, they have Jones, they have Quinnen, they had Carter, who I think was like their 4th defensive tackle. I don't know what's up with like the dislike for like DeForest Buckner at the moment, but I don't know. He's constantly being underrated. Defensive tackle, hard to think of. Justin Madubuike had a phenomenal season last year. Christian Wilkins had a phenomenal season last year. I guess those guys could be debated. I'm probably forgetting one, guys. Linebacker, Matt Milano, Levante David, probably not top 50, but flirting. Safety-wise, I think they got probably the right players. Cornerback-wise, L'Jarius Sneed I'd probably have on the list. And that's probably it, right? So that's kind of how I see it. I think this list is not great. I personally think it's pretty bad out of all the lists I've seen. Like, I think the top 10 is a complete disaster. I think the bottom of the list is pretty bad. The middle of the list is pretty good. But the top 10, how do you mess that up so bad? Like, no Josh Allen, no TJ Watt. No, like, you could make an argument for Lamar, for sure. Like, Fred Warner in the top 10 is absurd. Like, why is Tyreek at 8? Tyreek might be number 2, like number 8, right? Like, I gotta make a top 100, guys. I gotta make a top 100. If we get 100 likes, I'll make a top 50 at the very least. Top 50, top 100, guys. Gronk spiked the like button. Let's get 100 likes. I'll come out with at least a top 50, guys. Thank you so much for watching. It's Mitch, and I'll see you soon. Peace.